Hey guys, it's Viva, and today I'm going to be doing my January wrap-up. I can't believe that it's already been a month of 2016. That is insane. But in January I read 8 books. So the first book that I read in January, I finished it on the first day of January, I believe. And it is This Raging Light by Estelle Law. I think I've pronounced her name wrong, I hope so anyway. This book, which was sent to me by Maximum Pop Books, follows the story of Lucille, who lives with her younger sister Ren, and they basically have to fend for themselves because their mum left them all on their own. She is, I think, 16 years old or 17, and her younger sister is 9, 10? I think 10. And her dad, a couple of months ago, had some sort of incident, which means that he's not living with them either, so she's basically taking care of them both and trying to get enough money to pay off the bills and get food and stuff like that for them both as well. Lou starts to fall for her best friend Eden's brother, Digby Jones. Not a fan of the name, but I am a fan of the character. Digby Jones was just the perfect boy, really, and I can see why Lou would fall for him, even though he does have a slightly strange name. But then, so do I. How many Vibas do you know? I just love the focus on relationships in this book, so the relationship between Lucille and her younger sister, her and her best friend, her and Digby, her and her parents. Relationships are just explored really well in this book and I really enjoyed it. But what a roller coaster of emotions. Oh my god. It was just beautiful. It was absolutely stunning, and literally I couldn't have started off the year with a better book, really. So obviously it's going to be a 5 out of 5 stars. The second book that I read it as an ebook, and it is The Power of Six, which is the second book in the Lorien Legacies books by Pittacus Law. And this I have been reading for so many months and just did not get round to finishing it because I'd always start something new, and also, to be quite honest, it was a little bit slow. So the first book, which is called I Am Number 4, is quite fast paced, but this one I found was a little too slow. It followed the same characters, but it was also split into sort of 2 points of view, as there was number 7 in Spain, so it followed her, and it was also following John and number 6 as well. So I started it so long ago, I can't really remember what happens at the beginning, but things happen and they basically go on different adventures and are reunited. They're basically trying to get the numbers together now rather than staying separate, because they have found that now that the spell is broken, there's no point in staying apart, they have to join forces. So that's what this one's about. I'm not entirely sure if I'm going to continue with the series, but I would, I guess, like to know what happens in the end. And yes, I'm going to give this book a 4 stars because although it was quite slow at times, it picked up the pace and I eventually finished it. Hallelujah. The third book that I read was Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. Don't know. But I can't say much. Like I mentioned in my book haul, I really cannot say much because it would ruin something. I know it would. The only thing that I found was after I read this book and then I watched the film, and the film just lost its appeal to me because I knew exactly what was going to happen. So this may be one of those stories that you might want to actually watch the film for, although I'm not sure because then the book will be ruined for you. So I don't know, it's kind of, I guess it's your decision, but I just found that I probably would have enjoyed the film better if I'd watched it first. But I cannot say anything, just please buy it and read it now because it's astounding, it's amazing. And yes, obviously, it's a 5 stars, obviously. The fourth book was another ebook that I read, and it is Extraordinary Means by Robin Schneider. I seem to be reading really emotional books lately because this again was just roller coaster of emotions, tears, so many tears at the end. I also finished this book on the day that Alan Rickman died, so I found out about him and was hysterical. I just could not stop crying, and then I finished the book as well, so I was an absolute wreck. But Extraordinary Means follows the story of Lane and Sadie, who both have a form of antibiotic resistance TB, and are therefore kept secluded from the outside world in this place called Latham House, with a bunch of other kids who have the disease, and I guess they're either waiting to leave the place alive or dead, which is quite grim. Lane and Sadie met at a summer camp a couple of years ago, and they had some sort of misunderstanding between them, which caused Sadie to really dislike Lane, but after they explain themselves and it's all cleared, they start falling for each other. Before Lane was diagnosed with TB, he was so focused on his future that he really just forgot to live in the moment. So he was all focused on college applications and extra credit and things that would just, make him stand out to his chosen college. And so in the process, just realised that he just hadn't got many friends. He had a girlfriend, but once he moved to Latham House, she sort of kept her distance and wasn't very understanding. And even asked him to read one of her essays, which was going to go to the college. So while he's at Latham House, he finally decides that he just wants to live. And so he and Sadie and her friends, they go on these really cool adventures. They leave Latham House, the grounds, which they're not allowed to do for obvious reasons, but they do so anyway, and it's just adventure upon adventure for them. The ending was just unnecessary. I'm not going to say much more than that, but it was emotional. I'll just leave it at that. But yes, Extraordinary Means was a beautiful book, so yeah, I definitely recommend it, and obviously, yet again, 5 out of 5 stars. The 5th book that I read was P.S. I Still Love You by Jenny Han, which is the book that comes after To All the Boys I've Loved Before. Again, I read this as an ebook, and now I really, really want the physical copy because I'll be rereading these books so many times, I can just tell. So at the end of the last book, Peter and Lara Jean have a falling out, unfortunately, and they manage to resolve things in this book and get back together. However, someone from Lara Jean's past comes back. His name is John. He was another one of the people that she wrote a letter to. Things get kind of complicated with Peter and Genevieve. Is that how you say her name? And then with Lara Jean and John, and it all gets a bit heated up, but thankfully it's all resolved at the end. Kitty, I think, who is Lara Jean's younger sister, is one of my favourite characters. She is so dynamic. She's only 10 years old, but is so wise, and Lara Jean often asks her for advice, which I just found that I could relate to because I ask my younger sister for advice all the time. And yes, it's just such a cute book, and I just have one comment. I need a Peter. Someone please find me a Peter. That would be ideal. And obviously, do I even have to say it? It's a Jenny Han book. It has to be 5 out of 5 stars. The 6th book that I read was We All Looked Up by Tommy Wallach. I'm so bad at pronouncing names. Wallach. I'm going to say it as that. So this book is written in the point of view of 4 characters, Andy, Peter, Eliza and Anita, and they represent different stereotypes in society. And it's basically about how they leave their labels behind once news arrives that there is a massive asteroid that's going to completely destroy Earth and kill off everything. So it's just how they develop as people once they realise that stereotypes don't really count for anything anymore, and how they form relationships with people. I found this book to be quite slow at times, but the ending was quite fast-paced. The end sort of 50 pages or so, although I'm not too keen on the ending. I'm not really sure how I feel about it, but I would definitely recommend it as it's a very different read, and it was very interesting to read about this worldly disaster that was going to happen and then how it affects just, little people. It was really focused in on just 4 people and their lives. So I gave this book a 3.5 stars out of 5. The next book that I read was A Girl is a Half-Formed Thing by Imea McBride. It's a very difficult read, and it took me a very long time to get used to the writing style. So it's a first-person monologue written by an unnamed girl, and it follows her from her birth into her teenage years and into uni life. The you she refers to in this in the text is her brother, who has a brain tumour and then has an operation which gives him not only physical but psychological scars as well. Really interesting. to read it in her point of view because it's literally her thoughts. When we're thinking, we don't think in full sentences, which is why this book was so hard, because everyone thinks differently as well. Some people might think in more full sentences than others, so this is basically her thoughts. There are no full sentences. It doesn't really make sense at times, especially in her childhood years, because obviously she's just developing her language skills, so that was even harder, but it was so interesting. It is a little bit disturbing at times, and detailed as well, but that just added to the amazing storyline. I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars because it was a little bit hard and not my usual read, but I would still definitely recommend it. The last book that I read this month was Me Before You by Jojo Moyes. Again, another book that I really need the physical copy of because I can tell that this is just one of those books that I'll read again and again and again. This follows the story of Louisa Clark, who loses her job at a cafe in her hometown, and then in order to support her family financially, she takes up a job as Will Trainor's carer. Will 2 years ago was unfortunately part of a road accident which has left him paralysed from the neck down. And to begin with, Lou and Will just hate each other, they don't get on, they always try to stay in different rooms and don't talk to each other, but eventually they find that they understand each other very, very well, and Will's family realises that Lou is the only person that can actually make Will talk as much as he does and actually make him laugh. After finding out from Will's family that Will actually had tried to end his life the previous winter, and that is why that she has been employed in order to stop him from doing something like that again, she tries her hardest to change his outlook on life as she finds out from Will's mum that he has given them a 6-month notice, after which if he feels that he's not ready and doesn't want to continue with his life, he will go to Switzerland to end his own life. So Lou tries her hardest to try and change his view. She does everything in her power to do so. While doing so, he changes her outlook on life. Before, she was very conserved and very close-minded. She hadn't left her little town and just hadn't really broadened her horizons. She hadn't gone to university like her sister, so Will really makes her see what she's missing of life, and she promises him that she will do whatever she can to continue living her life on his terms. This book really, really got to me. It was very emotional, especially at the end, and I've just started reading the second book, called After You by Jojo Moyes. I'm not going to say what happens because it will probably give away the ending of Me Before You, but this film is coming out in June, starring Sam Claflin, Emilia Clarke and Matt Lewis, and I literally cannot wait. I'm sorry, I've just got a little bit emotional thinking about the ending because I've just read it like 2 days ago. Yes, obviously this book was a 5 out of 5 stars. That was the end of my January wrap-up, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys!